I know from personal experience, it can be really scary to start speaking out. And many of us are warned not to because it can actually make things worse. So many parents find themselves facing gag orders, which it's a whole nother topic. It's very unconstitutional. And on one hand, we need all survivors screaming from the rooftops about the family court crisis. However, it comes at a great risk. And so if you could touch on, where do you fall on that scale? I know up until very recently and your arrest and incarceration, you hadn't been on my radar. So can you tell a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. It's interesting. I'll say, haven't been on your radar or much of anyone's really because I only do as much exposing publicly as is absolutely necessary. In 2016, when I fled, because I made sure when I went public, I was able to share medical records, court records, police records as I was telling the story. Had a YouTube channel that I used to literally, after I fled, get to work and show people the proof of why I had to run. I had some audios. Texas and Oklahoma are one-party states. It means you can record as long as you're a party to the conversation. I released some critical audios, even from the emergency room visit with my court-appointed defense attorney, if you will, for the enforcement of possession and access. And then I had been documenting the story on a GoFundMe and also notating and acknowledging the gifts and donations of people that were helping us through about an 18-month period as I was working then as a single mom with 5 children to navigate never-ending battles in the family court. And so there were some things that were forced to become public when I went underground because of, again, how egregious that situation was. And I did only as much as was necessary. Thankfully, because of the evidence that I released, there's a new book that has just been released called Framed. They attempted to frame me with a national manhunt. And because of the evidence that I released, it silenced and kept everything at bay. It actually reversed it. I had multiple states' law enforcement with my name, Marlana Vet, attached to warrants. She's wanted for child abduction. And because I got the truth out ahead of that, they actually had to pull it back. And so even when I fled and had interactions with law enforcement, and I told them, this is who I am. I'm fleeing the state of Texas. This is what's been happening in family court. I'm in danger. My daughter is in danger. They ran my identity. They verified. They saw that I actually wasn't in the NCIC. And so it is my opinion that those were smoke screens at the time to limit my support. Look, let's face it, when charges are involved and the public doesn't really understand what they're looking at, it's very scary to continue to support someone that is being painted by the system or framed as a criminal, right? People don't know what they don't know. And so one of the greatest ways, and it goes back to what you just said, Tina, that they isolate us and they defeat us is that they silence us and then they further extend what typically an abuser will do in a relationship in isolating their victim or their survivor. It then gets extended systemically, where if we're charged or we're convicted, we are further isolated because there's people that, though they want to support, they're too afraid to. And so it does seem very intentional, very organized, very systemized when they move to do this. But sometimes the most extreme situations where someone is forced to go underground or someone is falsely arrested out of an advocacy center, it's forced. And other people say, well, if she can't speak, we're going to speak for her because this is insane. And so that's what happened when I went underground is people spoke up then. When I was arrested, people spoke up on their own accord. I'm in jail. There's not much that I can do, but I'm thankful. And I do want to say a huge heartfelt thank you to everyone that did step forward, National Safe Parents organizations and others, and individual, protective mothers. And many of you stepped forward to make sure that our voice could be heard this time. So that said, even with the release I did back in 2016, because it was all factual and I was providing the evidence as I spoke, I was not gagged. I actually have not been gagged. One of the things that I think is positive, as I try to find the positive amidst the negative, is the judge that in 2016 ordered my daughter into the custody, care, and control of her father and for me to have supervised visits. I mentioned she is now a justice in the appellate courts. She has actually written papers that have talked about the unconstitutionality of gag orders in family court. And so, while all judges don't believe this clearly, and many moms are gagged, many acting safely and lawfully are gagged, I actually have not been. Now, whether that will change, I'm seeing elements of the playbook starting to play out. I don't know. I don't know that it will even be beneficial because now all of my evidence has actually been removed from my custody, any of my close family members and children's custody, and it's already out there. So the ship has kind of already sailed.
Right,
But
right.
and again, what I'm learning, as you have encouraged, and as so many are encouraging, we're realizing we've done it the right way as long as we can. And unfortunately, when we do it the right way and we play by their rules the way they expect us to, and we're not talking about abiding by the law. Most of us, we are abiding by the law in protecting children. We're talking about continue to keep paying attorneys, continue to keep paying all the associated professionals, keep letting it happen so we can drag it out your child's entire childhood. We play within those boxes and we finally realize it's not helping most of us. It's not freeing most of us. It's not freeing our children. And so, what do we have left? Our
Right,
First Amendment protected voice to
right,
tell the truth, to
right.
tell what is happening to us. And thankfully, because the judge that was involved in the case has actually educated others as a Harvard and Stanford law graduate, that gag orders are actually unconstitutional, as you stated. I haven't been gagged, and I also have never had defamation charges because they know after all of my years in the system, 24 now, that Marlena has never made and will never actually make a false allegation. And 98, 99% of the time, she has proof.
Right. Yeah, it's and I know that your story is the story of so many others. I know that my story is the story of so many others. I know the exposure. I've personally experienced it of publicly speaking out. You start hearing all of these other stories. You start connecting with other survivors who share very, again, playbook. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I mean, during those years while I was underground, heartbreakingly, initially, I think like most, thought that maybe I was an isolated case, right? I'd made the wrong powers that be upset at some point, zealously and assertively fighting for my right to be free and my children's right to be free. And if I just get out of the state of Texas, then it's going to all dissipate, right? And the good people, child protecting, law abiding, family court professionals were going to step in and save the day. And I'm laughing not because it's funny, but because one, I also have to use a lot of humor, so I'm not crying all the time. But I say that to say I thought that my story was an isolated story. I thought that, okay, maybe because you haven't paid the legal team and the professionals to rush in and fix it all, maybe that's why this is happening. And so all you have, Marlena, is your truth. Get your truth out. Unfortunately, what I found literally from coast to coast is that my story is their story is mine, with obviously there's different dynamics in everyone's story, but similar. You talked about the threads in the beginning. The threads existed no matter where I landed in the country. I found survivors. I found people fighting, seeking, trying to figure it out. And they're all in different phases of this because in the beginning, you're in shock that it's even happening. And then I think at some point, a lot of people, they can turn to anger and the trauma brain takes over, right? And it seems very enraged and maybe disconnected and all over the place. I went through all these phases and stages. Then there can be come times where maybe legal teams and professionals are able to kind of get in and garner greater control. Then there are times when even the professionals that sometimes we entrust to help and fight on our side don't do that, and they lose all contact with their children. You have so many different variations of cases in the way that this plays out. And what I found literally amongst 8 different states during those 5 years was that this story was happening over and over again. And so I actually began just sharing my experiences with others as they were in their fights and as they were in their battles. And so I've been able to do, my own advocacy in these situations. But the other thing that was really, I'll say, encouraging to me is as I was continuing to engage in what I have called our fight to freedom, I have met professionals, public officials all across the country as well that work in these systems that, as long as their names aren't mentioned and they are not officially having to be attached to the case, they were actually quite helpful. And I'm talking attorneys, law enforcement officers, medical professionals that have reviewed medical records and confirmed what I did my own research and knew about what happened in 2016. I actually found people in systems everywhere that weren't working for me in Texas and now Oklahoma that were affirming in other states that, yes, we know this goes on. Yes, we know this is a thing. Yes, it really is that bad. And yes, you have to weigh your own pros and cons and do what you need to do to keep yourself and your children safe. That encouraged me. I'd say the fifth group was I found out that there were many people, just good people all across the country that, again, they may not join us publicly like a lot of us do once we've gone through it, that were willing to support in ways I could not have even imagined. Because what I've learned is that for the most part, most people, if they knew what was going on within our system, they would not stand by and support and condone it. And when they come across situations and stories that have the proof, they have the evidence, they have the credibility, and that is not me saying that other stories that don't get attention and support don't have it. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that when people are made aware of how egregious these injustices and post-separation abuses are domestically and systemically, most people, and I don't care what their political affiliation is, what their race is, what their socioeconomic status is, most people will not support this stuff if they know that they know that they know that, yes, it is going on. There's not more to the story. It is just unjust. It is corrupt. It is not proper. And it's hurting children and families. Those things encouraged me. There was a lot of pain in that because I sat with a lot of people in the midst of their family court stories, literally from coast to coast, California to New York, and everywhere in between. But I also found the hope that I believe you give with Family Court Awareness Month, right? Where governors, mayors, city officials are saying, yes, let's shine a light. Let's not hide and cover and conceal what at this point we know is absolutely definitively going on. And it showed me that as we continue to stand together and speak out based on facts, evidence, law, truth together, there are more that are joining us that will continue to join us. And that is not a helpless, hopeless situation. We are making ground, everyone one step at a time. I say one moment at a time, right? We are making progress. And so I feel like, I won't say I've seen it all, but again, over almost 25 years, I've seen a good span of it and experienced it. I think I kind of got the gamut figured out here. And so it's not a club we want to be a part of. That's one thing I will say in the most recent pleading I read on Friday. he says, she appears to love the limelight. And I'm thinking, I went underground and didn't say a word, wasn't on social media for 5, 6 years. And even when I came back, there are a lot of things that I could have gone after system professionals, government officials. I have not. But when they escalate to these extreme levels, they force a light. I don't know about limelight. This is not exactly something that you want to go public for. Um, but that's part of the deflection. And, I'm not worried about it. But um, yeah, I continued to find this crisis breaking out nationwide. And Tina, I'll tell you, there were places I didn't know what a hamlet was. So for those that don't, a hamlet is the smallest legal organization of a community that can be, I think, maybe like 300 people. Hamlets, townships, boroughs, right? Cities, every organized jurisdiction that could be in the rural parts of Pennsylvania, New York, um, bigger cities in California, rural communities in Missouri and Kansas, and so many different places, coast to coast. I traveled looking for freedom and help and support and justice while also giving it to others. And I found the same stories, same script, different cast, coast to coast.
Yeah. And I think so much of it comes down to, there is no money in believing abuse. And that is the harsh reality that is difficult for anyone to grasp if they haven't walked this path. And the fact is, there's a lot of money, $1 billion plus industry that has been created in the family court system. And all it takes is one unscrupulous professional to connect with others and create a ring of collusion and corruption. One of the big issues we see in that is the pathologizing of mainly moms. And if this is a topic you are open to touching on, I did read online that you lost your older son. He died, and I know you mentioned it here. First of all, my heart goes out to you. I can't even imagine. And even with his death, you have been scrutinized, is what I read online, and I'd love clarification, and criticized for how you presented, how you have mourned. This is inhumane. I can't wrap my mind around it, but I believe it does touch on the experiences of so many. We are in a system that doesn't understand trauma, doesn't, they're pathologizing mothers, and there is no perfect victim, that, and air quotes on that. Even somebody who would appear to be the perfect victim, you can go down any comment section online, and it's horrifying to read how victims are portrayed, are ripped apart. And so can you touch on that?
Absolutely. Um, since I've been out, it has been a journey and a process. I think I got out November 20th. All my days are running together right now. Um, but as you mentioned, trauma, if you don't commit crimes and jail is not your MO, it is traumatizing. And so I've been processing a lot of my exposures in that time. I've been processing even how, like you said, you get one unscrupulous professional that makes a phone call and it will cross state lines. And now you have people that you once deemed safe, as Oklahoma, my home state, was for me since May 2021, when we came back from the underground and I became an Oklahoma resident. My home state professionals are no longer safe. So I've been having to process a lot. But as I've been doing that, it was Friday evening at 5:07 p.m. Yes, I get served with the TRO that's been signed and an email that quite frankly, she intends to try to extend the date out to extend further time away from my daughter. And as I read through this, one of the things that's in there is, as I use social media just like every other person on the planet. So we're not even talking public stuff. We're talking memorial service, reels in my son's memory. I don't know which one of those he scrutinized, but in the allegations that somehow are pertaining to why my daughter needs to be protected from me, it is, even though she's speaking at the service, I don't see one tear. I know we all grieve differently, but I don't see a tear. Now, of course, those that were there know that there were many tears, but the fact that now, with all the stuff we do know about how she's not safe with dad, with all the stuff that we do know about what has actually occurred, and that she still, 3 months later, has a cough and narrowing of her airway. All of this deflection to things that do not have anything to do with this child's subject matter of this suit, child protection, police investigation, the things that I will be asked to respond to on December 2nd is the presence or lack thereof of a tear in my eye over my dead son. The suggestion that my daughter didn't even really know him, which, by the way, is not true, and we will provide proof. But the level of, again, inhumaneness, cruelty, inappropriateness. I could go into some other terms, but I'm not going to label. The lack of compassion for the sibling of the child the other side supposedly cares about, to say she didn't even really know him. Now we will address that, yes, she actually really did. And if she didn't, why didn't she? Would it be because they made it their mission to interfere with her sibling relationships over those 8 years? Where, yes, they did see each other at her 6th birthday party. But the other times, because he's not a safe person to be around, my family, her siblings, most others can't work with him, can't deal with him, right? But yes, there was times over the years where he saw her. He grew up, and the brother that she lost, basically, if it wasn't me, it was him caring for her first 2 years of life. And so to try to erase and nullify that sibling relationship and say it doesn't really matter to her, that whole interference with child custody that I did 5 days after the 2024 judge restored your rights, told me to turn her over, and I didn't, over an app because I was at work, because I didn't feel like it. Let's just erase the relevance of your dead son, the child's dead sibling, and say it's not that serious. She didn't really know him. And by the way, mom, if you're really that sad, you didn't cry right. So now you need to be psychologically evaluated. Y'all, now that's why I don't have my daughter and won't see her at all in November, is because of the presence of not enough tears, too many tears. This is what is being filed in the pleadings, and this is what our family courts are addressing. Now, I know there's nothing more serious that we should be focusing on for our nation's children, but this is what I'm now being asked to respond to. Now, I've got to hold my emotions, right? People have been asking me to speak. And unfortunately, while yes, I have thanked people, I have communicated in my ways to say, I see you all, I hear you all, I'm appreciative of you all. It is also why I've been reserved in any public response. Because here's what I'll say, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. And now that extends to my ability to even grieve right, whatever right means, being pathologized for that. And so, yes, that is a level of, I don't even know what to call it, Tina. But
I
yeah, that
don't
is
either. I can't put words to it. I don't think there are words. Um, it's and a good segue from that is, another one of when we're talking about moms being pathologized. one of the things we highlight in our post-separation abuse wheel is allegations of parental alienation, which was designed by Dr. Richard Gardner as a legal strategy for fathers who were sexually abusing their children. And sadly, even though this pseudo theory has been rejected by credible organizations around the world, it has become the number one legal strategy for abusers in family court. You have faced, allegations that you didn't cry right, that you didn't mourn your son, and I'm so sorry for your loss. I just, my heart, it's, there are no words. Have you also faced allegations of parental alienation? I have to use air quotes whenever I say that, because it's, sometimes I feel like I'm in the twilight zone, that something that has been discredited and denounced is has become this lucrative industry in family court.
Absolutely. Well, I will say that because of all of the same script, different casts playbook behaviors, I am shocked that this is the first time since any family court proceedings I've been on the receiving end of. Um, this is the first time it's finally been alleged. I almost feel like, yay, I knew we were going to get here. Finally, here's my, not that it's a good thing, but again, I'm poking fun at it because that's about as much sense as it makes.
Oh.
I've heard the term DARVO, and this term, as I've heard it explained, stands for deny, attack, reverse, victim, offender. It is to say, don't believe your lying eyes, don't believe medical records, don't believe outcries of children, don't believe, evidence of abuse, ignore all the facts, deny it, right? Attack the person that is speaking out about it, right? They are damaging the child by speaking out about it, by believing them, and they are poisoning that child against this poor reverse victim, oftentimes father. How dare they talk about him like that? How dare she listen to the child, believe the child, try to get proper, lawful, legally mandated protections for the child? She is now the offender and the one that needs to suffer, that the child needs to be protected and kept away from, so that there is not further emotional abuse, they start to call it, psychological abuse, brainwashing, influence, as if to say that our children do not know what they have experienced, what they feel, as if they are not making their own determinations on who is safe people and who is not, who they want relationships with and who they don't, which typically is, if you hurt me, most children, they don't want to continue to be hurt. They don't want that relationship. And we should not be shifting blame now onto the parent that says, yes, you're right, or the professionals even that say, yes, you're right, you should not be hurt. That is appropriate. In any other arena besides family court, everyone would agree that this is not safe. This is not okay. We prosecute offenders. In family court, all of a sudden, the offender is the victim, and those speaking out protecting the child are the offenders. Again, you feel like you're living in a twilight zone where up is down and right is left and black is white, and nothing makes sense, and it just continues on and on and on. And we do our best to, yes, stay sane amidst the crazy making, because it's legitimate, bona fide crazy making behavior. And so I am surprised that though I have been engaged in family court proceedings off and on since 2013 to now 2024, 11 years, the first allegation of parental alienation has finally come against me. I laughed, I'm encouraged, because I cannot alienate an x-ray. I can't alienate medical records and treatments that, because I abided by the law, I gave them to my daughter. And after 2 months of him and everyone attached to my daughter and his community failing to address the issues in her chest, I have medical records that says when mom kept her and cooperated with medical professionals to give her medication as prescribed, she got better. Imagine that. So
Right.
it's going to be interesting to be able to now provide the proof that I did not alienate medical records and medical evidence, but thank you for playing. It was only a matter of time it had to come.
No, and we've done multiple protests around the country over the years, and one of the signs that I will always hold on to is protection is not alienation. And I think it is so powerful, and it really gets to the heart of what this is. People are believing their children. People are listening to their children's voices. People are listening to the professionals who are saying this child is in danger, this child is sick, this child is being neglected. That is not alienation. Um,
If I could just say one more thing on that, and thank you for elaborating. The other thing that I was accused of in the bogus arrest warrant, the last paragraph says, allegations have continuously been made to Child Protective Services, and they actually, knowing that I'm actually not the one that has made recent allegations, or even over a greater time period, even including 2023, they actually know it has come from the school. It has come from a children's hospital in June, and they know that it came from a mandated reporter counselor in October. In the arrest warrant allegation, they actually blame me for making the allegations, and they say we believe, even though they've been unfounded. Um, and when they say unfounded, that's AKA code word for covered up and concealed, right? They call them unfounded, unsubstantiated. And we believe she does this to have an excuse to keep the child. The other thing that is going to be very interesting to see how they're going to overcome this is the fact that, one, they already know I did not report, in what immediately led up to me being incarcerated this time, which is really the only time besides that one, surrounding these issues, is that they know that I didn't report, actually begged and pleaded for a report not to be made, because I know how it gets weaponized against us. So even when I'm doing things that everyone knows I'm not doing, right? I was presented with the reports. I was presented with the request to call the hotline back because we received a report from someone else. We need to clarify some information. I was given a notice of my parents' rights by CPS saying, you are not the subject of the investigation. This parent is, here's the allegation. Even though the police have that in their possession, they still put it on me. And now his attorney is moving to further put it on me because it is so widely accepted and effective in the family court arena that even though everyone knows that the mother is not the one that made the allegation, because oftentimes there are professionals that do allege, they still blame it on us. So again, we're back to damned if we do, damned if we don't. They are going to craft and fix the narrative to whatever it is that they need it to be. And so that is what we are talking about. It is almost I don't want to say it's an unwinnable situation because it's not, but it just shocks the conscious. I just, the human mind, it makes it very hard to conceive how do they intentionally and knowingly mischaracterize, um, and make allegations against, oftentimes again, mothers, pertaining to what other people have seen or concerned about, know, and reported, and they just put it all on mom. She's destroying the relationship. And I'll say one last thing that comes to mind, particularly about my daughter and I. I mentioned before, because he has been allowed to interfere with my child custody rights. She is 10 and a half now. Um, she was kept away for 8 years, both against court orders. And we basically had been back together from mid-April, okay, until August 12th. So we're talking about an April to May, June, July, August, 4 months. Last time I saw my daughter, and they took her from Pennsylvania out of orders from family court in Pennsylvania, kicking and screaming. She was 25 months old. They now want to have everyone believe that he had such a great relationship with his child that in 4 months, and dad is better financially positioned, where he lives in Texas is the eighth wealthiest county of 257. I do actually have address confidentiality protection for where I live in Oklahoma, but I will tell you, if it ranked in Oklahoma counties, it's at the bottom of the list. So 4 months together. And somehow they had this great stellar relationship that in 4 months, mom was able to influence and destroy. That is going to be an interesting argument. And of course, we'll see how that works for them.
And touching on what we were talking about on CPS and DCSF or whatever it's called in your particular state, I our platform at One Mom's Battle has grown tremendously. I think we have about 250,000 people between each social media platform worldwide. And some of the messages that I get that are the most fear-based and intense are from moms who something has been reported to one of these agencies, whether through the school when mom wasn't even present, or through a child care provider or a law enforcement officer. And these moms who, there's this bias that we just concoct all of these allegations and accusations to get a leg up in custody. I would say it's the opposite. We have so little faith in these systems, and we know how it can be turned around and actually used to take custody from us, that we are terrified of a report being made to any of these agencies, to the point that moms are afraid to truly open up to their own therapist about what is happening, for fear that that therapist is going to have to report it. And this is a crisis in itself. Not only are moms making, no one would choose to spend their life the way you've spent your life, the way I've spent my life, the way so many other protective parents. There is nothing in this world worth living in this hell that so many of us are living in. We are not doing these things to get a leg up in custody. It's one of the biggest myths and misconceptions that is out there. It angers me. So a couple more questions for you. I know in our very brief conversation that you and I share a very similar mentality when it comes to staying on the high road at all times.
Yeah.
As survivors, we are under an intense microscope, and it's important that we are always keeping our side of the street very clean. And I know, especially when stories are shared on social media with advocates or well-meaning people, people tend to start swinging mud or wanting to take the low road, or and that approach can really hurt our cases. Can you speak to that and share your perspective on this?
Sure, absolutely. And I'm glad that you addressed this. And while I want to say, I do not believe that anyone has intentionally and knowingly created or spread anything falsely with any malicious intent. I don't believe that's happened at all. There have been tremendous people that have stepped forward to share information about our story. What I also know is that our life experiences and our trauma, when there are similar threads, a lot of times they may fill in the blanks, where if something wasn't specifically said to mean a certain thing, it's close enough that that can get misconstrued. And so I do want to make clear that the actual allegation in the situation, I believe the first call came into CPS, Texas CPS hotline, was on October 21st. And it was about the incident where, yes, allegedly, she was yanked from her garment from the back and lifted a little bit off the ground. When I took her for x-rays on 10/21, and then after the dosage for her infection that she had going on, the x-ray technician actually asked me, Mom, is there any chance that there has been any throat injury sustained? And so in that situation, again, like you just explained, Tina, I didn't even run in saying, hey, Dad has not been giving her antibiotics as prescribed. She has this pervasive cough. And by the way, he choked her. Like, can you just say that I didn't even do that. And of course, they will find out that I have proof that that's exactly how it happened. I did not run in alleging that because I was thinking it was due to the medical neglect issue of not giving her medication as prescribed and allowing that to remain over the 2 months. My daughter has a very hacking, barking cough or a clearing of her throat. She was being told in the middle of the night by her dad to shut the F up. He didn't want to hear it. She was being disciplined at school, having a cough drop, being told to spit it out as it provides some relief to her and her saying it's not candy, and then being told she was disrespectful. Um, Everyone was focused on more silencing her cough and whatever has been going on for weeks than they were, let's get to the bottom of it and get her better. And so, with that particular incident coming up in conversation, because a lot of what I was focusing on and another professional was focusing on was just not continuing to report and even attack or go into family court with what's happening, but just teach her how to navigate through it, right? To still respect her father and authority, right? Sadly, how to not even fight back or assert anything if something going wrong is going wrong, how to just kind of let it slide and stay safe, which is an incredibly difficult position to be in as a parent, because any other parent, if not in family court, they would say, hey, if someone tries to grab you or harm you, you run, you scream, you shout, you get attention, you get help. We have to teach our children to do the opposite. Don't fight back because I don't want you to be hurt worse. There are laws in place now that have unfortunately had to be passed. Caden's law is one of them. Horrific story where this little girl, even though her mom continued to fight to protect her, was taken at the hands of her father, literally running away. And so the context of our conversation with mental health professional assistance was when these things are happening to you, how to fight back less and still have a relationship with the person that's harming you, which outside of family court would not be the instruction we would give any child, adult, or human being at all, but it's what we're forced to do. And so that's speaking to that allegation and what happened. I will also say there was a previous history reported, as you mentioned and alluded to, Tina. I believe it was March of 2023. And my daughter had actually already disclosed this to me. And I didn't call police and CPS. She told me about an incident where, again, he jerked her so violently from behind that the next day she went to school, she had blood in her eye. And I have yearbooks now from those years. She's pointed out the teacher was a male teacher. She was in the third grade. That was the first to report it to the counselor, to administrators at her school. And it wound up in dad's police department and CPS aware. And they literally came to the school and told her, dad has the right to discipline you. Now, I'm not going to go into a whole conversation about strangulation effects and how they manifest in the days after. But for those that are aware of those dynamics, that is basically what they were looking at and as mandated professionals reported. In family court, last hearings we had August 12th and August 16th, dad's attorney tried this narrative that the police then repeated. The police, by the way, are parroting dad and his attorney in what they did in this arrest warrant. And she actually tried to say, Your Honor, there have been investigations before that mom has called, and I'd like to enter R2, Respondents Exhibit 2. This is a CPS investigation that is unfounded. And I immediately said, objection, Your Honor. Can I take a look at that first? And when I looked at it, I noticed the date and I saw it was 2023. And I said, wait a minute, Your Honor. I didn't even have my daughter during this time. I did not make this report, but instantly, sometimes you just give them enough to dig their own graves. As soon as I saw it, I recognized it as this is the report my daughter had already told me about that I would have had no way to prove happened until his attorney tried to use it against me in court. And when I objected to it and pointed that out, she says, I'll withdraw, Your Honor. And it didn't make it onto the record, but she tried. right? This is what we're having to deal with. I'm not an attorney. I'd like to go in and address truth, facts, evidence, and law. I have to address lies and manipulations and things that they know did not come from me, painted as coming from me, successfully defeating it in court, as I will continue to do. And so that was the one allegation pertaining to the, I believe CPS listed it as choking when I got my notice of parental rights, because if your child is involved in investigation and your rights haven't been terminated, they have to do very due diligent searches to find that parent, notify the other parent that your child is involved in investigation or has been taken, which of course, over the 8 years that that occurred, even when he got his felony DWI in 2019, they haven't notified me. They have swept all of this under the rug. They have concealed all of this. And now with this coming forward, I believe that is why they escalated the move to silence and arrest me. Because one of my questions was, is this notice of parents' rights telling me that anytime my child is involved with your agency, that you have to notify me? And the CPS worker there in Denton County said, I can't answer that question. Of course, that's what it's telling me. But what that's also telling me is you all have been violating my rights for 8 years. You've been trying to pretend that she has this cohesive, happy, safe relationship with her father in father's village. And she has been in danger, hurt, and harm for 8 years. And now it's coming out. And so they had to move to silence me. And I am thankful for those of you that got louder. Now to address the issue around child sexual abuse. And again, what I will also say is I didn't get to, before things started being expanded, it's not like we had some kind of powwow of, I need everybody to share this message. And so again, I do believe that everyone authentically and genuinely shared what they believed they heard, what felt as close to maybe their story or the constant systemic things that we see surrounding CSA. But in this situation, there was a report that, yes, was made against the grandfather, paternal grandfather, that unfortunately he was choosing not to dress fully, to bring her into sleeping with him and having body parts on an adult that should never touch body parts on a child being pressed up against hers while she was sleeping. When my daughter told me this, it came out of the fact that she's in the 5th grade and the school was having sex education classes, right? They were teaching children about that and appropriate touches. And so that's why it even came up. Again, I did not bring it up and have a perfectly normal mother-daughter conversation about body safety with her. Because of 2016, I honestly wasn't even going to have a conversation with her about any of that until 18, because of this fear. And that is wholly inappropriate that I'm even placed in a situation to have to feel that much fear to do what is a normal mother-child, even if it's not mother-child, just parent-child conversation about body safety. And thankfully, they are doing it in school, so my daughter can recognize, this feels weird. Mom, can we talk about this? And I even expanded further. Maybe that's normal how he walks around. No, he wears a robe, right? So I don't want to get into too much, because part of the reason why I have chosen to stay silent is anything that I share, I think about, yes, what if my child sees it one day? And she is a very bright, bubbly, active 10-year-old, right? But at the same time, I caution us away from giving more credibility to how damaging it is to a child to see their story online, giving more credibility to that doing damage than the fact that they're actually living the story that's being told online.
Right.
We cannot dismiss it, deflect, and detract and say them hearing people talking about it or possibly knowing that people are talking about it is worse than them having to live and endure it. And so that was the report. That was something that, again, as my response honestly was, it's inappropriate. If it feels weird and it's uncomfortable and you have the choice of where you sleep, then take the other choice. And just basically, it was an opportunity to talk about consent and how children cannot consent to any relationship that is involving their private parts. And it was about as sanitized as it could be. And if I'm ever forced to prove that, I will be able to. They cannot pin and put this on me. And so I do want to make it clear that, sometimes we use the word CSA, we use the words assault, and instantly different visions start to come into people's minds. And unfortunately, with her other parent and that collective community, they have done enough over the years consistently and continuously. I don't need to embellish, and I wouldn't. And again, as I have been in family court systems since 2000, not once before now have they gone to alienation. Not once have they gone to false allegations to police, CPS, or courts, because they know Marlana does not make false allegations and she has proof of anything that she has to say or defend. Finally, one last thing I need to mention on that note. With the allegations coming out in this regard, this is a situation where, and I don't know that I want to give too much more, so I'm going to actually probably pull back. Okay. But what I will say is that when they arrested me, literally in showing up at the advocacy center after they had gotten my daughter comfortable, and I had encouraged her to go to the room. I didn't tell her what to say. When your child's going for forensic interview, you do not tell them what to say. What you tell them is they're going to ask you various different questions. They just want to talk to you about your experience, and you tell the truth, right? That's it. That's the extent. I will say they've already signaled that there was no legitimate interview, that interview was a setup to get me at a specific place and time to do then what has also been pled, hold her so that dad could come get her 3 hours later. And so where I want to encourage people to continue to stay lawful, legal, truthful, not embellish anything. It's not required. You can't lose your credibility in any way, shape, form, or fashion by any form of exaggeration. And most of the time, people are not. And again, I don't believe that has occurred in this situation. And again, everything that has been said and can and will be proven. But they know that I did not make those allegations. And so just continue to be encouraged in speaking truth. Sadly, you shouldn't have to protect yourselves, but in protecting yourselves, if that means sometimes having to record where a child does not know that the recorder is running so that how it came out can be proved, trust that when these situations are setups and there's not authentic interviews being done because they already know the playbook they're going to, which is coaching and alienation, just trust that if you give them time and just be still, they will reveal what actually happened or didn't happen, which is no thorough, credible forensic interview or investigation, so they could jump to this claim of coaching and alienation.
Do you have words of encouragement? So many people are probably relating to the majority of what you've shared here. For those who are hearing your story for the first time or hearing it in detail for the first time, what would you say to them in terms of encouraging them in their own battles?
Well, I don't like to preach or push any form of religion or my faith on anyone. What I can say is that the fact that I am even able to sit and talk and speak and put words together after all that we have been through has been because of my faith, my relationship with Jesus Christ, my personal Lord and Savior. I know that as my favorite life verses are Romans 8:28. God causes all things to work together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purposes in Christ Jesus. And Genesis 50:20. What the enemy intended for evil, God intended for good to bring about this present result. What I know is no matter what has gone on, what is going on. What may continue to go on is that things can turn. The very fact that my daughter was even returned after 8 years, where most of the time moms do not get them back, right? It means please don't give up hope. Don't ever stop fighting. What fighting looks like in our fights for freedom, our fights for justice, our fights for safety and protection. What that looks like for you may look different than what it looks like for me. Just like what it looked like for you may have been different for me. One thing I have to tell you, we all must have is hope that at some point, in some way, someday, it's all going to work together for the good. I gave you all my frame of reference as to how and why I hold on to my faith and my belief and stay sane and stay continuing to press on. And in many ways, positive, although I feel every emotion. That's the other thing I would tell you and encourage you to do is feel every emotion, be human. They are going to scrutinize everything you do and don't do, but be human anyways, right? And don't receive anyone's shame for being human and experiencing human emotion that would be normal, understandable, received, and supported by any other individual as long as it's not a mom and family court. So be human, be real, be raw, feel and experience every emotion. But then I would say, third one, use discernment because they are watching and monitoring every single thing that we do. Find your safe people. And for a lot of us, you may not have a lot of people, it might be one or two people, right? If it is a mental health professional that actually understands all of the dynamics of different personality types that we see in these high conflict situations, great. Sadly, not enough of them do understand. So it may not be a mental health therapist, but make sure you are tending to your mental health. And a lot of times that can be community and peer based. Do your best to allow that to be with people that can have balance. Should we have righteous anger? Should we have rage over the things being done to the most vulnerable in society and being done to us? Yes. Will that look differently for different people? Yes. Am I, or do I believe Tina, are giving judgment to anyone on how they grieve, how they mourn, how they heal? No, by no means. But be mindful, be watchful. Do not be ashamed, but find your safe people where you can do that privately and not as much publicly. Because again, you wind up with it being called a limelight and you're loving every piece of the abuse, right? Which is laughable. But find your safe people, be human, grieve, heal, go through the process, go through the journey. If there's anything else I would say is make sure you are going through it with someone. A lot of times we've been taught it's safer to be quiet. We've been taught it's safer to isolate, right? I would say don't isolate. When you think about any animal in the wild, when are they their most vulnerable? When they're by themselves. When they travel in a pack, they have more support, they have more protection, they have more coverage. So find your tribe, find your pack, find your people, right? I know One Mom's Battle, they have chapters. I know that, again, there's various communities all over social media. Use discernment, what aligns and feels good for you, and is not going to put you in a place that is overly risky, I should say. It's authentic, it's genuine, it's truthful, but just do the best that you can publicly when processing these things. Understanding you're going to be damned if you do, damned if you don't. So don't take it personal if they scrutinize you that you did something wrong. It means that's the game. They literally call it the game. That is the game. They're going to play it anyways. Do the best that you can to give them as little as possible. But if you're speaking the truth, then speak your truth. That's another thing I would suggest. Um, and stay strong. And what I mean by stay strong is please, and I really need to stress this part, because I realize we've lost not only so many children, but we've also lost a lot of parents and particularly mothers in this fight due to the mental health, the cumulative over years effects of body somatization, which creates disease, and the trauma, the complex PTSD, the ACEs, all of these dynamics that literally shorten the lifespans of us and our children. Take care of your health. It is not selfish to find the ways that you need to make sure that you're taking care of your medical care, that you're having those days that you just remove yourself from the fight, pace yourself, right? Um, and please, what being strong means to me in this context is never allow anyone to convince you or for you to even convince yourself with the inner me that the fight is not worth fighting anymore, that you need to give up, or that there's no reason to live. There is still always a reason to live and continue. If you are still breathing, if you're under the sound of my voice and Tina's voice, there is still a reason that you're here. I reference purposeful pain a lot. I know some people that's a little bit triggering, and I don't intend to trigger anyone or say that the pain and the trauma you've gone through and that your children have gone through was a good thing for a greater purpose. I'm not saying that. We all receive it differently. What it means to me, what I believe it's clear it means to Tina and other advocates, is that some things you don't fully understand until you've actually experienced them. The things we're discussing, most people can't even believe or conceive until they've experienced them because it's too outlandish and it goes against everything we've been taught about our legal and our justice systems, right? And so, what I've got to say is that if you're under the sound of our voices, you survived and are still here for a reason. Not everyone made it, not everyone is still here. And so, yes, you do have a purpose. If, when, how much, how little you choose to share, that's a personal decision. Take the time to think through it. Don't let anyone rush you into it, but also don't let anyone hold you back. Your story matters. Your family court story matters. Can every platform post every story? No. I'm honored that, yes, there are people that are now picking up my story. But I don't believe that it's because it's just Marlena and my daughter's name. I believe it's because there are dynamics that are indisputable, that are egregious, that are shocking, and immediately clear that Houston, we have a problem. All across this nation and internationally, we have a problem. And our story represents so many of yours. Make sure that we get to know your stories because you're still here to fight and live another day to tell it. Some of you, we were kind of talking about this. You do better writing. If you do better writing, write it out. Some of us were better speaking just straight from the heart, unscripted, unplanned, unprepared. I just got to share it raw as it's happening and what's really going on. Whatever that looks like for you, find someone that will care enough to listen to your story. I will say a lot of times people think platforms and greater exposure is a good thing. What I can say, to whom much is given, much is required, right? It's not all glitz and glam having your story shared widespread. There are other safety issues and dynamics that now come into the equation when your story is more widely known. So I want to encourage you all, don't be discouraged. There were times that, yeah, I thought if I had a lot more attention, we'd do better. Look, the pendulum swings both ways. There are pros and there are cons in doing what I'm doing right now. But I also know if I don't want to wind up with a Mariah's Law, I have to do what I'm doing right now and continue what all of you started for us when I could not speak. And so please stay encouraged. Please love your children, friends, family, those that are safe for you. And don't give up. Continue to spread and share awareness. I will say this, aware of it. Sometimes we may have the same goals and we come across at it from different angles, different life experiences. And so we don't always align in every aspect of what is the solution. Listen, I would say whatever you believe that solution looks like, or whatever platform or organization or group you can align with to further that, then do it, right? Let's focus on the solution, not the problems. Let's lessen and eliminate some of the internal conflict that can happen because we disagree on different matters and moods and tones and dynamics. Um, Look at your children's pictures, videos as much as you can. I take a lot of pictures and videos because for years I couldn't. And in my most difficult times, when I missed my children the most, those pictures and videos literally got me through. And finally, just know that you are seen, you are heard, you are loved, you're not crazy, um, and you're not alone. And so that's what I would say to everyone. And I hope that something that I've shared has been helpful to someone out there listening.
Beautiful. I'm just, you articulate so many things that need to be said and people need to hear. And thank you. For those who hear your story, so many of us hear these stories, we feel helpless. What can people do to help you right now?
Thank you for asking. I appreciate that. I do have this next upcoming battle, December 2nd, 9 a.m. Um, don't mind saying it's in Collin County, Texas. That is the county that has had continuing exclusive jurisdiction over our case since my daughter was a baby. Dad does live in Denton County, and this was a local police department that did this, his local police department that protects him profusely. But it will be in Collin County. And so, what I would say is that right now I am still pro se in the family law matter. I did follow up with Denton County after getting out, and I asked if I had a court appointed attorney because I haven't really been able to work in over a month with the loss of, yes, my son, and then being forced to be my own attorney in family courts April through August. That has taken a huge hit to income and just even the ability to generate income. I will say something else really quickly about high conflict because I heard that word used one time from a judge. And again, all the education that you have done through One Mom's Battle, other platforms, National State Parents, others that are doing this work, and I know what high conflict means. Typically, there's an abuser and there's a parent trying to protect, but they blame them both equally. And actually, the safe parent more, protective parent more. Um, After they returned her in August, kicking and screaming, literally telling law enforcement and her dad directly in the courthouse, outside of the DA's office, he hurts me. You hurt me. Please don't make me go back. Even after that happened, she was returned. Medical neglect, yes, strangulation, this other concern happened in those 3 months. Because I heard that word used one time, I stopped filing. I heard the signal and I said, they're getting ready to turn against me for going to family court, right? I can't call CPS, I can't call police, I can't go to family court. And I said, fine, I have to get to work, right? Financially, so I can take care of myself and my family and my children and stay in this fight. And so I didn't file anything. And that backfired against me. And so what I would say now is like, what do I need? I need court watchers. I want to be very, very clear. I am a huge truth speaker and justice fighter. I've showed up again in many battles for many people against injustice. I'm huge with no doxing, and let me express what this means. If there's anyone in our case, including her father and her home, if you come into possession of their name and their address, I do not want anyone there. I don't want anyone around there. I don't need people to rally around her school. They're already starting to play the we're in danger because this is non-public. I don't want any of that. If you find out about any professionals, yes, there had to be calls to the governor, which again, I'm thankful that that was organized and orchestrated. NSPO did that and so many others because I wasn't signing for extradition. I had received some legal advice not to do that for different reasons. And that meant we got to get a governor's warrant. So everyone contacted the governor. I understand at some point in time, I believe a cell phone number of the first lady was being passed around. The way that I like to do justice fighting to keep everyone out of potential criminal implications is nothing private on any of these officials or individuals. do I want moving forward on my behalf? I want to respectfully request everyone use official phone numbers, emails, only channels that are occurring, in terms of approved forms of communication associated with their jobs, nothing personal. So, same thing. Court watchers that please come. Right now, they're not giving the option for any form of virtual Zoom. And so that's really difficult. So if you are close by, or maybe if you have the time, ability to take a day trip, right, or a half a day trip, and you can travel and be there, I would like to ask respectfully that people show up peacefully. Um, People are teaching what does court watch look like, taking notes. And again, this is a process built into our public system. So courts are to be open. So there's nothing that I'm asking people to do here that is not built into our court systems. We need court watchers. Funds, definitely. There was a GoFundMe that was started, again, at the advisement to my son to do that. So that the third part is I would be appreciative of pro bono legal counsel to assist in getting me through this December 2nd proceeding. I do know his counsel is going to try to continue it, so I will make sure that I give updates if and when I find out that happens. I have already communicated I don't want any continuance to further deny my time from my daughter. They will have now eliminated all of November. And so any form of professional services for this family court battle, definitely, I will say thank you. There was some professional services that came to the forefront that will help in this journey because of the public attention. So anyone that knows what I'm facing and up against, those professional services, unfortunately at this time, pro bono would be helpful. Fundraising, we do have a couple of attorneys. We have some that we have reached out to that I've talked to before that others talked to. I was on the inside. If I'm going to be able to retain them, we're looking at $10,000 to $15,000 pretty quickly. And so I don't know if that could occur, but there are some that have said yes, they will get involved, they will help, but that's kind of the sticker price there. So finances, and again, continued prayers. I would appreciate definitely continued prayers. My daughter's safety and protection, as well as my other children. We're all tired. It's been over 11 years of dealing with these dynamics in family court. Oh, if you resonate with what we've shared today, like, comment, subscribe, share, right? Continue to share the message, get the word out. Continue to participate in Family Court Awareness Month, right? Getting the story out. And so I think those are the biggest things I could think of right now. I will possibly and likely, yes, have an official call to action regarding the criminal charge. Right now, my understanding in calling Denton County is, again, is not a charge picked up by the DA's office. I actually talked to the DA's office before all this occurred. That was giving me further information on how to report public corruption within the police and CPS. But again, I wasn't focused on being high conflict in the fight. I was focused on getting my daughter well. And so there may be some calls to action there. If I put any of those out, then yes, please share those. But again, legally, lawfully, safely, and appropriately is what I ask. Again, thank you, thank you, thank you to any and everyone who did something. I do truly, fully believe that while I have a strong faith in God, He works through people. Godly people, just good-hearted, child-loving people. And for everyone that did anything, for anyone that has donated, that has assisted in any capacity, shape, form, or fashion, thank you. I know that we are here and continuing on, and even in this moment, because of all of you. So know that I stand with you, I support you, I'm lending my voice in my story, which this is a very difficult decision for me to make right now because of you, because I know that together, the more that we share and work together, the better things get for all of us. So that's what I can think of right now at this time, Tina.
Thank you. And we will, for everyone, we will share links to the GoFundMe account. I will put information for the Court Watch. So if you are in Texas, if you can drive to Texas and be there. But Marlana, thank you for your bravery and sharing your story with us. We both know there are so many out there suffering in silence, and this is such an isolating journey by design. So many of us have said at one point or another that the system is broken, and I counter that with the system is working the way it was designed, unfortunately. But I believe when one person speaks out, they speak for everyone. And so thank you for becoming a voice in this movement. It is truly an honor to link arms with you and to stand with you in advocacy. And you and your daughter and your other children will all be on my heart. And I will continue to share your story. And thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Tina. I really appreciate you. And again, just continuing the work of One Mom's Battle, and all of us continuing to move through this the best that we can. We have to believe and we have to know for better, brighter days ahead. So thank you so much for having me.